Good morning, REC Nation. Welcome to the Brunch with REC. This must be a special month because you get to see me twice this month. I did the last Brunch with REC with Simeon while Jazz was away. And then I do my segment, which is Real Stories from Real Investors. We've had a really busy week and a half, 2 weeks since our last discussion or our last Brunch with REC. We did our first mini in-person event at a presentation center for a new opportunity called Centricity in the heart of the city in Toronto downtown. That was really good. I was really happy just to see a good handful of our REC insiders join us, learn from the developer, learn what other developers are doing right now. Obviously, with the market turbulence that we're experiencing, it's good to see what these large institutional investors are planning, just to keep ahead of it and take advantage as well. So that was a really good discussion, and it was a good week. We have a few of our REC insiders who are taking action and committing to some of these opportunities that we spoke about. Other than that, we are planning our next larger in-person event. It's going to be one of our investors marketplaces. We will still be doing it, I think, virtually, but for everyone in the GTA, expect a call from myself or someone on our team. It's going to be mid-February. An email should be sent out shortly, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be completely, I believe anyways, value added or value created anyways for our REC insiders, and we're going to be going over landlord intelligence. So I don't want to talk too much about it. Jazz and Simeon are just ironing out the details of who's going to be joining us sales provider wise, but especially right now with landlords needing to put their best foot forward, doing their due diligence with prospective tenants as well at the same time. Any type of delinquency, best practices is what every investor or landlord needs to do, and that's what our event's going to be about. So I'm really looking forward to that. So expect an email shortly, REC insiders, with that. And my segment is called Real Stories from Real Investors. Jazz and Simeon, they do a great job of going over the macro, talking about current market conditions. They have service providers or analysts on, just really diving deep into market trends that we're noticing. What I do is I go into the micro. I speak with our REC insiders, our investors. I learn about how they grew their real estate portfolio, some successes, some challenges that they had as they build real estate wealth. And today I have Cory Matthews joining me. Some of you might actually know that name. He is a fantastic realtor and investment specialist in the St. Catharines or that greater Golden Horseshoe area. As well, Cory is an investor himself, and he owns a contracting company. So Cory, you're a jack of all trades. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I imagine it's hard to wear all these hats and to juggle all of these different businesses that you do own and you do run, as well as being a successful investor. What came first? Was it contracting? Was it real estate? Or was it investing?
Real estate. Well, I mean, what came first was that I learned how to build stuff and stuff like that in university. And then that passion led me to want to invest in real estate. And then because I was young and green, I didn't really have any investor or realtors that wanted to help me. Yeah. So I just got into it and said, the best way to learn how to invest in real estate is become a realtor, teach myself. And then 10 years later, here we are.
Yeah. And that is something that I hear a lot of investors, especially if I find the investors who transition into real estate for themselves are ones that do mostly like rehab opportunities.
Yeah.
Ones that they want to be the first one to see some of these opportunities that they can add some of that sweat equity to. And you did it yourself. That's great. And now you're successful on all fronts, which is really great to see. Yeah. I know we ran into each other a few years back at one of the Royal LePage events, I believe, right? So
yeah,
that was great. And to see your growth has been fantastic, Cory. It really has. What was your first property that you bought?
Our very first property was something we bought in Listowel, Ontario, and it was actually not a rehab, not anything like that. It was just I call it like a REIT. So it's through like an alternative to a REIT, because basically what we did was we bought from a guy called Todd Slater, he's a simple investor. So he buys apartment complexes, converts them to condo title, and then sells them to investors to buy them like each individual condo. And then he manages it for you and everything's simple, right? So for us to get our feet wet, we only had like $20,000. So we were able to buy this property for $100,000.
Wow.
And you know what I mean? Like it was just a very much like a baby step, right? Everything we've done kind of in building our portfolio is kind of testing. And then when we realize, okay, this works, then it's like, okay, let's go full bore into it. Let's go deeper into this, right? So started with that. I mean, the returns are good. They're amazing for being completely hands off, but compared to like some of the other projects, as I got deeper into learning different strategies, you know, there's better ways to make money. But you have to be more active in that process, right? Whereas that one, I barely have to think about it all.
And so it's hands off, low capital, which is really nice. And especially as you dip your toes in investing, it's nice to have something where you don't have a lot of your capital tied up, which is great.
Yeah, we were so green too. We just wanted to get a property, and like my wife and I were living in Toronto at the time, and it was like there was no way we were going to be able to afford anything in Toronto because we were making like, I don't know, like nothing at the beginning, right? We were 22, just like young kids that just trying to afford rent and get into the investing game a little bit, right? So
and things snowball though, right? And I think that's one of the advantages of investing in real estate. One, there's so many different strategies or ways to invest. My strategy and your strategy might be totally different, and they both work. Right. And as well, things typically snowball, especially with these lower purchase prices. I find sometimes taking advantage of an area that has a lot of developments in tertiary markets, let's call it, you get some of that appreciation quickly.
Oh, for sure. Well, and then just it does hedge you against like what's happening right now. If it if interest rates go from 2% to 6%, it's like, okay, well, on $100,000, that's you can survive it versus if you have like, I don't know, a $2 million property that just doesn't bring in the right amount of cash flow. It's a lot. That hit is just bigger because the numbers are bigger, right? So
and it's you know, there's always big picture and seeing the appreciation, but definitely you have to be able to, you know, withstand turbulence.
And that's it too, right? It's like you still have to survive. You know what I mean? You may be right, but if you can't survive the like hard times, so that's what we've always been like with our portfolio now. We're kind of looking at this going, okay, like we're in a good position. The next property we purchase, we just got to make sure it fits with what we have. We don't want to wreck what we have here by trying to be like by making a mistake over here. So it's just being pickier a little bit.
So your first one was in Listowel, but I know a lot of the investors that you've helped, at least REC insiders wise, have been more in that like St. Catharines, Niagara kind of area. Is that where you focus a lot of your investing now?
Yeah, Listowel was like just like kind of a one-off, just happened to be a good opportunity.
Do you still own it?
That came up, and then I went to work for another guy. So at that point, I was working for a guy selling apartment buildings, who actually works, I believe, still works with Royal LePage, James Roy. He's a great guy, and he taught me about the apartment building sales. And then I left and worked with a guy named Brad Lonsbury, who taught me a lot about the construction side. So we were like learning how to like, you know, I was a laborer on the site, learning how to do, you know, a full flip, which gave me a lot of the knowledge now and the confidence now to run the jobs I'm running for myself, right? So
when you're, because obviously you build a muscle or you get an eye anyways to seeing what's possible and what's not in rehab or you know, potential opportunities where you can, you know, do some of that work to the property and increase the active appreciation. Like kind of run me through how you would do a walkthrough. Like, what do you look for potential rehab opportunities? Like if you're doing just, you know, as an investor going through either one of the open houses or one of the showings, like what do you look at to see potential?
Yeah, so it varies depending on the strategy, right? So like if you're just looking for, like if I'm looking for something that I'm just, you know, going to do a quick renovation to that I can quickly turnover. We're looking for good bones, good dry. Like we're looking for, if it's just the cosmetic flip, everything pretty much has to be in decent condition, and just looking to see, okay, can we rip the kitchen out? Can we change the floors? Can we, paint it? And is everything like gonna withstand that? And can I pay the price they're looking for me to pay based on a smaller renovation budget? Or what we're looking at now more so is like, how cheap can I get this dog's breakfast? Because I'm gonna have to put like $300,000 into it. So, and those ones are harder and easier in some ways, because when you're looking, like we just did one where we redid everything, and I feel super proud and happy about it because I know everything is new in it, right?
Yeah.
Like the electrical, the plumbing, the HVAC, like it's spray foamed in the basement, new foundation, new underpinning, like everything is brand new. So I don't have to worry about that property as much as I do, say, another property we have that still never got gutted, has plumbing that was done by a guy, like some guy that I don't know, like 5 years ago before I owned the property, right? So we're getting more into the realm of like, okay, if it makes sense numbers wise, can we rip out everything and redo it all? Because that's the better product to own long term. And especially because we're looking to own them for a long time. That's what I'm looking for. Like I'm looking for good bones now. Like, okay, is the foundation good? Because at the same, like I'm saying this because the project I just did, I had to pour a new foundation inside the existing foundation, which was a nightmare. Like it was fine.
I would imagine that.
Yeah, like it was crazy. But and it all worked and it finished off really well. But it was like at a certain point in that job, I was like, I could have just built a new house.
Yeah.
Like it would have been almost easier just to pour a new foundation on an empty lot and build up than do what I had to do, because I had to like run this like pipe into the like I was pouring part of the foundation from the first floor, like through between this gap in the wall and the subfloor where I had to cut it to be able to run the hose through. So yeah, what I'm
was that the first time you've done that?
Pardon?
Was that the first time you've done something like that? That seems very intricate, honestly.
Not the first time. So I've underpinned about 5 houses now.
Yeah.
So the underpinning wasn't the first thing, but the first time. But doing the inside foundation was wild. Like because the first round when you pour all your pins all around. So that's like dropping the floor 2 feet and then digging under, and then that's you pour those. Then you pour half the wall, and then you pour the second half of the wall. But the first part of the wall is okay because you're down in the basement and you got this pipe over your shoulder and you're filling it up all around. That's okay. But
lights turn off here.
But the second part, I was pouring from the first floor, so I can't see if there's any, like if I'm having any blowouts or anything. So I had one guy in the basement and I'm pouring, but everything's really loud. So I'm just telling him to pause every few seconds because it sounds like you're in a ship, like an old ship where there's creaking and everything like that. And you're like, is there like a pop? Because if the forms pop and your concrete goes everywhere, it's a nightmare. So luckily,
and then you have to kind of push it around, right?
Well, because I rented a pump truck and you're using like a 2-inch hose, it actually flows like it's like you're filling up each spot kind of as you go.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to do a little bit of like vibrating and stuff like that to make it flatten, but no, it's pretty good with the hose.
So you said something interesting, and I kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit. You said that the larger jobs sometimes are easier even and harder at the same time.
Yeah.
Or more of a headache sometimes. Is it because when you completely gut, you essentially can do what you want to do with it, right? Like there's no extra surprises when you blow it out.
So being able to completely gut it just like gives you that ability to do everything new from the beginning, and you know where everything is. You're not like, if you do a cosmetic flip, you might have a plug in the wrong spot or multiple plugs in the wrong spot. You might actually, because you're not ripping out all the drywall, have a bunch of junction box that are buried and you don't know, right? Like you could have a bunch of issues that you don't actually know that you're dealing with until after the fact.
Until you open up the walls, right? Like
exactly. And then when you gut everything fully, you're bringing everything up to code. So it's just like peace of mind, right? Like you have interconnected smokes, all this stuff that's like perfectly done, and your tenant's getting a better product, which means you're getting a better tenant, which then causes less headaches long term, right? Like these are all things when I was first starting out, I was just like, oh, fine, it's fine, it's whatever. We'll just like put some lipstick on a pig, we'll rent it out, it's fine, it's great rent, like we're cash flowing, da da da. And it's like, you know, that worked. Like it did get us to where we needed to go, but way more stress, way more like calls on the weekend. You're like, fuck, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas this other one, this duplex we just did, we knock on wood, but like really shouldn't have many calls about it because everything is brand new. And there's like, well, this place also had a flood earlier this year. That's why we made the renovation happen quicker.
Yeah.
Where the second bathroom, the pipe exploded, ended up flooding the whole second floor and basement. Like I had 6 inches of water in the basement and no floor drain because it's old, right? There's no floor drain, right? So the water just sat there, and I got in there on January 27th, and I had to come in and like walk through all this water to turn off the power and turn off or not turn off the power was already off, but turn off the water and everything like that. And so we shouldn't have anything like that because we put in shutoffs in strategic positions now. Like everything is kind of safeguarded around that now.
Yeah.
And we just put in things in place to avoid those types of things happening, which you can do when you fully gut it, which you don't know when you don't fully gut it, right? Like when you just do a cosmetic renovation. The other reason too is that there's just less competition.
Like
people are willing to pay.
Opportunities, you mean, like to purchase?
Yeah, there's less competition on the purchase side. So like when you're looking at, you know, purchasing a turnkey duplex, right? Like I have clients, you know, like let's go look at turnkey duplexes. Like perfect. But the problem is you're going to pay the highest price.
Yeah.
And might not get the best overall return because you're not providing that much more value. You're just looking for something that's turnkey, which is fine. But you have to kind of like expect that you're going to have more competition because it's what everybody's looking for. So then for us as investors, it's easier to go after something that's a bit rougher that nobody else wants because that's where you can add the value and get the biggest kind of uplift in price.
And if there's less buyers, you can negotiate, right? You have a little bit more power of negotiation there.
Well, exactly, because you can go like, look at this, like, nobody can live here, right? So.
It's good because you can actually go and literally itemize the work that needs to be done and the cost of it. Yeah. Because you've done it and you own the company that does it, so it's a little bit easier. Do you recommend investors, if they're going to be looking into some rehab potential opportunities, to kind of before they put an offer, to speak with a contracting company to understand the cost of it?
If they've never done it before, 100% talk to a contracting company, because I find sometimes people, well, not sometimes, pretty much all the time, people underestimate the renovation costs
all the time,
especially
and
like
time,
even guys,
time of completion.
Pardon?
And time of completion.
Oh, time of completion and budget. But like, here's the thing, right? So even if you were like a real estate investor and you did, you're like, yeah, I did a bunch of real estate investing in 2010, but I haven't done much since. But like, I got a good handle on it. I know it. So okay. But the problem is, since 2010, prices have like tripled, right? So it's like, even I have a friend who's like, great, knows a lot about building and knows a lot about pricing. And the last renovation he did 2 years ago, and he's getting prices from people now. And he's like, Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, like stuff went up. And even though prices on lumber and certain things are coming down, other things are just staying that price, right? Yeah. Like there's certain things, especially like electrical stuff, that just isn't coming down. HVAC stuff just not coming
flooring
down.
Too, right? Flooring is kind of keeping the price.
Flooring's gone wild, and it's like in theory your prices should have come down, but I think it's also complicated too because you don't know where stuff's coming from either. Like we import so much stuff, and you're like, the funny joke we're having is like, oh, I didn't realize everything comes from Ukraine, because that's the excuse, right? It's like, oh, it's coming from here. It's like, how much can these guys produce? But it's like, it's all interconnected, right? So we're seeing, the other thing I'm seeing too is vinyl floor. So we put a lot of vinyl flooring into our rentals. I like like for people that are like, building their dream home, engineered hardwood all the way. But if like rental properties, I love vinyl, because if your tenant does spill something, they don't clean it up for a little bit or they miss it, it doesn't wreck the floors. Your floors are still going to be in good condition. But that has gone from like, I was getting it for $3.25 a square foot. Now it's like almost $5 a square foot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the vinyl is exactly what I've seen. Like it was around, I think it used to be with insulation. Like if you were hiring someone, it's about $6 a foot, six and change a foot, and now it's gone up, right? It's like $7 or $8 a foot.
Oh, well, that would be for hardwood. Yeah, vinyl should be like, if somebody's installing your vinyl, depending if it's glue down or not, but like it should be like $1.80 a square foot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because you can lay that in, like, I mean, if you want to pay me $6 a square foot to lay vinyl, I'm there for it.
So it's around that then, eh? It's around,
it should be around like $1.80 to $2.50. If it's glue down, it's different. It's gonna be more expensive because there's more labor in it. But vinyl's pretty quick because it's click.
Yeah.
Right.
But plus the actual cost of the vinyl.
Oh, plus the cost. Yeah. So you're looking at about $7 a square foot if you're pricing it out. Yeah, and then hardwood, you're looking at probably like, it depends. But you're looking at, for labor costs alone, because you can pick any type of hardwood and pay any price per square foot on the hardwood. But you're looking between like $4 and $8, depending on how complicated or intricate it is, right? Like if you're doing herringbone, it's going to be more, right? So, but sorry, we're getting into the weeds about stuff.
No, well, that's the whole purpose of this conversation, right? It's I find the thing that I do best is I go off on tangents and speak. And sometimes it makes the conversation longer, but there's always some knowledge there. So that's great. Sure. Do you have a renovation or an improvement to a property that you recommend people doing to, depending on the cost, it'll increase the value the most? Like, what's that renovation that you recommend people doing, or something that you do to your properties that will?
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Increase the value the most.
I'd have two answers for this, right? So for people looking to like sell their permanent residence, right? Like if it's your home and stuff like that, I think, it stands true that like if your kitchen is dated, and the easiest renovation, if you have carpets, remove all the carpets, put in an engineered or a vinyl, put in a nice trim, and paint everything. Paint is huge, and lighting is huge, right? Like if you can replace your old dingy like center mounted light that's hanging and is like off yellow to 4 pot lights in that room or 6 pot lights in that room, that is it just completely changes the way the room looks. Right? Like we have before and after pictures of that, like of putting in pot lights, and it just, especially in basements, it makes it feel like it's not a basement anymore. Right? Nice. Like it goes like, okay, this is right. Another decent reason for gutting, at least the ceilings, is that you can, it's easier to run pot lights. But this is the thing. So for like, for people looking at this and going, okay, what's the easiest house I could do that in if I was looking for like an easy flip? Well, what I would suggest is like buy a bungalow. Bungalows are easy and great to flip. The reason being is you can access the main floor ceilings from the attic. So you can rewire everything upstairs. You can rewire everything on the main floor and then hoping that you have an unfinished basement, because most likely you will. If it needs renovations, the basement will either be unfinished or paneling and need to be kind of ripped apart anyways.
Yeah.
So that's what I would recommend for like a first investment for people. I often recommend like a bungalow that needs renovations, because it's so much easier to run all those things, right? Like you can rewire an entire house basically without taking any of the drywall off the walls or the ceiling in a bungalow if the basement's unfinished and you have attic access, right? So lighting, I'd say, is number one. And then, like basically, depending on how dated the kitchen is, kitchen's good. But like if we're looking at cost effective, lighting, paint,
and carpet. Floors. And flooring. And removing carpet. Well, that's a great answer. How are you finding the market right now in kind of your backyard? Because it's changed, right? And from 2021 to now. It has changed, and just you and I were talking before, right? the big thing for me anyways that I'm noticing is the lack of listings on the market right now. We're seeing 50 to 60% less actual availability of listings, so supply's dried up. But how have you been finding the market?
Yeah, I've been finding actually compared to last year, our supply is substantially higher. Like I will say, like I remember last year we were looking downtown St. Catharines, and I was chatting with my wife, and I'm like, "There's 3 listings."
Yeah,
like 3 in January. That was it. And I was like, I'm like, look at the prices that they're selling for, because we ended up selling one in March because we were like, this is crazy. Like I can't, like it didn't make any sense. So so this year we're seeing it's tough. It's tough, especially from a cash flow investor perspective. You pretty much have to look for something where you can provide value or add an extra unit or create extra income and value through renovation. Because if you're looking for like a straight duplex or triplex, the prices that the people are trying to get for those don't make sense with the interest rate, because it's like the interest rate went from 2 to 6, but the price didn't go down enough to justify the 6%, like purchasing this at 6%.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're going to do a long-term hedge, and we're going to say, like, obviously interest rates are going to drop long-term, near term, they likely will actually probably rise a little bit more, but then long-term they'll go down. So if you're going to bet on that, then it's okay to buy right now with something that doesn't necessarily make cash flow sense or like make financial sense. Because you can run your numbers and say, okay, I know it's going to go, like, I'm going to get a good price on this property, but I know the prices are going to go down and I can be able to get it, it'll make more sense at 4% interest.
Even if you find something that breaks even at 5.5, 5.75%, and then at 4%, that cash flow is going to be really good.
Yeah. But what I'm also telling a lot of investors too is, like, practice some patience here and be aggressive, right? Yeah. Like, don't try to make a deal or force a deal. That's where you get burned, right? Like, it's not, I still stand by this. It's like, you make the money in the purchase, right? Like, you obviously can make some more money, like with appreciation as it goes on, but like, you make the money in the purchase. And a lot of people in your
purchase price is what's set. That's what you bought it at. That's price.
And I will say this too, and this might not be a very popular opinion, but it is what it is. In 2020 and 2021, a lot of people made horrendous investment decisions and got taken care of by a market that was going up 25 to 30% a year.
Yeah.
And now they're sitting and going, I don't know, like what happened to my investment? It's like, well, that was a terrible investment, but you got carried through with an irrational market. That's now we're in a flat market, and people are like, well, it's like, it doesn't, those strategies that really shouldn't have worked at any other time worked. Yeah. And now they're like, if you held onto the property, you're likely probably even or down from 2021, right? So, because that's what we're seeing. We're basically seeing a peak in March, down probably 25% from there over the aggregate. And then, so that's leveling out almost with about somewhere in 2020, like mid 2021.
Value-wise, like if
value-wise, yeah,
for sure, 100%. What I have noticed though is because of and I take it because of the development that's happening in Hamilton. Naturally, we're seeing so much rent increase there. Like they over 20% year-over-year rent increase. And it's spilling over to some of these other markets, right? Like ones like Grimsby, Brantford, Welland. We're seeing a lot of rent increase. So there are, like, I have been finding some good cash flow positive opportunities, but I think you're right in the sense that, you do your due diligence twice over. Whatever you were doing in 2017 to now, or let's call it 2017 to 2021, do double that due diligence that you would traditionally do, but also take a shot at something. The ones that are selling right now are the ones that might have a little bit, the sellers might be a little bit more exposed to these market conditions right now, or these interest rates, and they have to sell. Work with somebody that understands or tries to understand what the seller's motivation is. Work with a good realtor anyways that asks those questions, and take a shot. take a shot at it.
Yeah.
If they say no, that's okay. You take a step back, you reevaluate, and you just go find other ones.
Yeah, I did a reel on that too. It's like the key to negotiation is motivation. Like if you don't have somebody that's motivated, it's going to be very hard to negotiate the deal that you want, right? And oftentimes, especially like the turnkey properties, somebody's probably put a lot of money into it. They're not necessarily very motivated to sell it because like unless they're underwater in loans, like they're not very motivated because they put in $200,000 into it or something and they need to get that money out. But the properties that are like, you know, a little under, you know, like they don't have any renovations, they look kind of rough, those are the ones that are great to purchase right now because they're sitting, because nobody, like everybody's picky now, like every buyer's like they finally got the power, so they're like, oh, I'm not buying that, like I got the power now, like screw you sellers that you
I can negotiate. I can tie it up on financing. What do you mean?
Yeah, right.
So
so those ones are getting hit hard, which is good. It's a good opportunity to purchase, and I do think there are deals out there. But yeah, you gotta be aggressive and not be afraid to just throw in an offer that you think like otherwise before was like kind of insulting. It's like, no, just throw it in and see what happens. It is what it is. The market's changed, and to your point about the rents, right? Like more people are now so. They wanted to fix the affordability, but in reality, they made the affordability way worse, right? So it's like at 1%, at 1.5%, somebody might have been able to be approved for like 600,000. Now they're getting approved for like under 4.
Yeah.
Right. So is it really more affordable? Not really, because the prices
people into the renters market. You're right.
Right. So it's and that's what it does. It's pushed more people into a renters market, which now like we're seeing down here. Like if I told you what we were getting for like we did a 1-bedroom basement apartment in this duplex conversion, and I feel like in 2015 when I did this, I would be expecting like 1,000. Yeah. And now we're probably going to get $1,400 to $1,500.
Yeah. Right.
Like it's changed dramatically.
Like Oshawa is a market that I look at just because it's Durham and I'm not too far from there, and we're seeing 3-bedroom duplex, 3-bedroom upstairs is around $2,400 right now in smaller pockets. Like it's not all Oshawa, but in ones that I look at, it's $2,400 for upstairs. Downstairs, 1-bedroom is between $1,600 to $1,800 a month, depending on the state of the property. And a few years back, those all day there was like $1,300 to $1,400 a month.
It's kind of brutal, actually. But what it does, and what I would recommend a lot of people do, is this is a great opportunity to like house hack, right? Whether you do, right, like that's the other key to our investment journey and the way we've been able to buy multiple properties is live below our means, and part of that is every property we've ever lived in we house hack, because to some degree, right?
It's exactly what Josh says it as well. Especially to people looking to buy a primary residence, I think it's more applicable because investment, it's all about the numbers. But sometimes when you have some motivation, you live there, you have to feel comfortable in your house. I find that there are times when you have to have tougher conversations with buyers who are looking for primary residences, and just say, hey, right now this is a stepping. It's just a step in your future, home situation. Stomach the least amount of expenses. Yeah. Try to find something, even if you have a little bit less space. If you can find something that you can rent out the basement, those properties, appreciate the most. Yeah. In my experience, in the traditional residential side, that they appreciate really well. Yeah. There's always going to be buyers, first-time home buyers, someone looking to downsize and offset some income as they retire, or investors. Investors love duplexes. So
the other thing, so like to your point, right? And this is like, we love duplexes for that type of thing. Especially like a bungalow duplex, it's great. Because generally a bungalow duplex, you're going to get similar size units, up, down. And raised bungalows are perfect because you got lots of light in the basement. And to be honest, if you're living in the upstairs, there's a little bit of inconvenience, sure, because you have somebody living under you and whatever. Like some people really, really don't like that. But for us, like I'm just so cheap in the sense, it's like, why would I pay for my mortgage if I can get somebody else to pay for my mortgage? Like that's our situation now. Like in this house, we wanted access to our basement, and we wanted for like family and stuff like that. So what we decided to do was we actually decided to B&B our basement.
Oh, nice.
And it's been phenomenal. Like,
is it in St. Catharines?
Yeah, it's in St. Catharines. Yeah. So instead of doing like it's not an official Airbnb, it's actually like a bed and breakfast kind of deal.
Yep.
And it's great because you get to like meet different people. It's you don't get this kind of stagnantness of like, you say maybe you picked the wrong tenant and now you're stuck with them. So that is like, I get people that have that as a fear, but to be honest, yeah, like there's no better way to put yourself ahead financially than to rent out a portion of the property that you own, that you live in. Because now if you think about it, right, like you go from paying, maybe we'd have to pay $3,000 a month to live in this house. And we're going now to each only having to pay like $500 out of pocket, right? Which now allows me to take all my extra income that I would be putting towards the house into savings to buy another property, which is then going to snowball me down the road further and further and further. And this is like, that's how you buy your freedom, right? Like, and in economic times like we're in right now, like I'm not gonna let's not sugarcoat this. Like this is tough times for a lot of people, especially like these renters that are renting a basement apartment for like $1,800.
Yeah.
Right? It's tough, right? Let's not sugarcoat that and pretend that's not a thing. But you have to be strategic in this right now. Like this is like, especially with the higher interest rates too, like you really, it's beneficial and in your benefit to have somebody else pay at least a portion of your mortgage.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
try to offset some of these expenses for sure.
Well, exactly. And then the other thing I was going to say too is that like, so say you live on the main floor of the bungalow and the basement is rented, right? I always love to have like contingencies on contingencies. Like if the work, like what happens if we go to 10%? What happens if we go to this percent? How can we survive this and navigate it so that we as a family are going to survive and be okay? And part of that is like, well, okay, if we need to switch it up, if we live on the upstairs, that's great. We have a great life. But if things get really tough, we can always move to the basement and rent out the upstairs and get pretty much our entire life paid for. And then you know what I mean? Like you always got to have these things in your back pocket to be like, yeah, you got to swallow your pride sometimes if you make, if things get tough, but at least you're surviving. You're not like,
And especially if you can keep the asset too, right? If you can somehow do that, because there's more than just your expenses every month that you get out of the investment, that, right? With not even including passive appreciation, you get that principal payback, right? So it's always nice if you can keep it for keep the asset, right? You'll never be able to leverage from it again if you can't.
And plus, sorry, one more thing too. There's also tax planning benefits to renting out your personal residence, because now you can write off the interest. And you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of extra things that you can now justify as write-offs. You can write off a portion of your expenses. Like I love to turn any expense I possibly can into a justified write-off. Like not some like weird under the table kind of thing, like an actual, okay, this is legitimately able to be written off and I don't have to,
Which is what, like the tax benefits, like we say the 4 ways to win, but the 5th way, the 4 ways is cash flow, passive appreciation, active appreciation, and principal payback. But the 5th way is tax benefits. So
huge. I would say the tax benefits should be higher up on that list.
100%. It's just one that we don't.
Huge.
A lot of people don't usually talk about too much, right? Other than when you get into the nitty gritty of the investment.
Yeah.
And another thing that I'm finding a lot of investors doing, and maybe with your clients as well on the real estate side, you're seeing this as well. People want to take advantage of the market right now, and getting a little bit more power. You can get we talked about negotiation. The prices have dropped a bit, as well as the rents have increased. So they want to take advantage of still getting into the market. But a lot of investors, they don't want to shield or put up 100% of the down payment, 100% of the expenses. So what I have noticed recently is a lot of investors are opting into doing joint venturing. We have a program called the Real Estate Action Plan, and essentially it's just it's learning about what the investors or our REC insiders are trying to accomplish through investing. I learned about their current portfolio, some challenges, what we're doing here really, but their long-term and short-term goals of investing. And I'm having so many conversations now where people have some capital and they want to invest, but they don't want to shield 100% of the expenses right now, especially, if interest rates go up a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I'm, literally having so many conversations on how to build joint ventures. And
I feel like it's spreading the risk too. Like you kind of said there, like it's kind of like, I don't want to take on all this risk by myself. So maybe if I have a partner, it'll help that.
Yeah. Are you noticing that as well, like with the people you're working with?
Yeah, I'm noticing, what the conversation is too. And I think it's probably part of that conversation you're having is I think a lot of people started their journey and started doing their research when interest rates were lower.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going back to those mortgage brokers to say, hey, like, I'm looking to buy another one. And because the thing is too, it's because maybe they bought a property that was cash flowing on a variable rate mortgage. And now their mortgage rate is higher.
Yeah.
Their cash flow has disappeared. And now on a debt service coverage ratio, they can't, like, they're not carrying that property the way they were before. So now to the bank, they actually can't get approved for what they're looking at. I think it's also partly that, like, it's a little bit of limitation.
Oh yeah.
Right. Like even my wife and I were like, we're looking to expand, but we really have to be specific on the deal because the deal has to cover itself to make it work for us to be able to purchase it. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, because the debt service just won't work. Yeah. And we have a full portfolio that fully cash flows. And that's coming like from our end. So if you have a portfolio that's negative cash flow, it's going to be a lot more difficult unless you have a very, very high income to get approved for, like $1 million triplex. Yeah. Or, you know what I mean? So that's basically what I'm thinking too, is like some of it's just out of necessity. Yeah. They're looking at joint ventures because it's like, I still want to buy a property, but I can't afford, like I have, say I have $200,000, but I can't get a $700,000 mortgage. So now you're looking for a partner on that. And
at least still have, you're giving up a portion of the appreciation, a portion of the equity, but having 20, let's say you go together with 4 investors, 25% of something's better than 100% of sitting on the sideline, right?
For sure. The only thing I would caution people with that is, like, it's great to do those deals. It's great to like keep moving forward, because I get that like almost addictive side of real estate is like you really just want to keep moving forward. Just be very, as picky as you are with the properties.
Way more picky
with the joint venture partners.
Way more.
Yeah.
I think it's probably double or triple the time to structure the joint venture than to actually find the property and buy it.
Well, 100%, because here's the thing, right? Like, the last thing you want to do is partner up with like three people that you kind of know, but like don't necessarily know super well or whatever, or you do know really well, and come to a place in the market where the market shifts and one person wants out.
Yeah.
And now you have to sell the property. Either if you have either try to buy them out, or if you can't buy them out, now you got to sell the property. But it's not ideal circumstances to sell the property, right? And one person and 3 people understand that, one person doesn't. And now you have to sell the property, and it's not great for you. So yeah, I would say, like, definitely make sure the people you're partnering with have the same type of
realistic expectations.
Expectations, and also just like an ability to view risk in a different way. Because I know some people, like, some people I'm friends with, I love them, but I wouldn't partner with them because they don't have they might freak out and be like, I want out of the deal. It's like, all right, that's not what we planned on. Yeah. But okay. Like, what I mean?
And I think I always say, like, draw a line in the middle of the paper, right? And say, if it's 2 people, like if you're trying to do another, like, partner with one other investor, write exactly what you expect out of the investment, what you bring to the investment, and have these open conversations. And then once you get an idea of what the expectations are, what the roles are for everybody, capital, exit strategies, as well as contingency plans, like just in case, let's say that you and I are working together on an investment, and we purchase something, and 2 years down the road I lose my job and we can't cover the negative cash flow or the expenses, whatever it is. Yeah. What's a contingency plan there? And it's good. And also, like, be okay. I always like to say with the investors I'm speaking with, like, if you and I were going to be doing this, like, I would give all of who I am out there. Like I would show them like, this is what I make. This is, how stable my job is.
Yeah.
Currently, this is what I own in real estate. If you're okay to disclose that.
Yeah.
And, with the expectation that, there has to be some trust there.
Yeah.
Like you guys are building wealth together in this case.
You like, you have to know all that stuff, right? Like, it's like, and I mean, I'm biased because I'm in the financial industry and stuff like that. So I do talk about numbers and incomes and things like that very freely. Like my wife sometimes goes like I'll be at a party and just like talking about stuff, and I don't realize that I'm divulging information, or like not even divulging information, but just like talking about numbers. And they're like, people don't always understand that. And I'm like, but to me, that we shouldn't shy away from those types of conversations, because that's how you learn and build income and kind of do that, right? But you have to. I think like when you pick a partner for life, like your wife or your husband, like you should also have a good solid conversation on your financial goals, because that's half the battle and half the problems in people's relationships. And it's the same thing with partnering. Like you got to look at the partner and go, okay, like, do we know each other well? And have I looked under the hood? Like, do I know what I'm driving here? Like, do I know what's, who I'm partnering with and what they're willing to do and go through to make sure that this is successful.
Yeah. And even, after you even have everything in writing, or like everything on that piece of paper, go speak with a lawyer and build a joint venture agreement. Like, it doesn't matter if it's your best friend. I think even more so if it's someone in your inner circle, 100%. You should do that. But there's a bit of a cost. There's not much, but it's a bit of a cost, but it's going to be worth it in the long run if you have everything there. Anybody
that's been sued realizes that like the cost of a contract is nothing compared to
what comes after.
What could come after. And I think it's, I think people go like, oh, but like, why would we talk about this? Or it's going to the negative and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't want, let's just, we'll make the deal happen. And it's like, no, this isn't, you're just going through all the contingencies of what could happen. This isn't going to happen, but like, what if the worst case scenario happened, right? Like when I run my numbers on a property, I don't run them at the best interest rate. I run them at conservative 3 or 4 points higher, and I run different scenarios and go, will it still make money at this percentage? And, because you got to be able to know if you can weather the storm. And same thing with partnerships. You got to know and say like, hey, if this happens, like, let's talk about this with no emotions and it not happening. And let's see how we do there before it actually comes to a pass because your emotions are way different talking about it. Like if someone's freaking out in a conversation it's not even real. It's not even a real situation. And it's just like, okay, like what happens if the market goes down 20% and we own this investment? Like, are you going to want to hold? Oh no, that would be terrible. Why would we ever even do this? It's like, okay,
they all have the same goals,
right? Like,
it took an hour to get down to that. We weren't the right partners, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly.
It's tough, right? And that's why I think structuring joint ventures is, you do that before you even look at opportunities. I'll obviously have an idea of what's out there, but first try to find the right people that are trying to get into the same types of options that you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you run performas when you're working with investors?
Yeah.
With your performas, do you have like a pretty good, because one thing I find, our performers are great, but the active appreciation side of it, like for rehab opportunities, is something that I have to do separately.
Yeah.
Does your performer, do you work in like active appreciation really well, like itemizing the cost there?
No,
or is that still a separate thing?
Not really, no.
I'm trying to find the right one that can do that.
Well, there's too many. There's also a lot of differences in every property, so it's hard to kind of like, especially with the value add, like you could put one spreadsheet together and you're gonna have to change it for every property because everything's kind of different. Like unless you're going after the same property every time, like you know what I mean, like you're going after a duplex conversion every time in the same market, so everything's going to be the same, your trades, the costs, then you can kind of build it out. But
so you just do kind of like a blanket, or like a rough idea. Like let's say you were working with me, I'm one of your investors that we're doing showings. You would do like a kind of like a rough conservative idea of this is how the property can perform. This is maybe the work that needs to be done. And then once you actually go there, then you'll kind of itemize things afterwards.
And that's, so what I do is I go through it and I go, okay, it's going to cost you know, I think you're gonna want to put in $75,000 of a value add to this property.
Yeah.
This is how that plays into the numbers. This is where you can bring it to, right? The other thing I was gonna say, like that relates to this, is that that's changed a little bit too in how people were doing deals. A lot of people were doing the BRRRR method, which is fine.
Yep.
I mean, I think the BRRRR method is a really great method, but it becomes a lot more difficult to do that.
Yeah.
When the interest rates are higher. So
yeah,
because the banks are risk adverse.
And the appreciation is not as fast.
The appreciation is not as fast, and the
Yeah.
banks are risk adverse, right? So the banks are looking at you now going, okay, I know you know how to do this.
Yeah.
But we can't give you as much money as we used to give you, right? Or the
Mhm.
appraised value doesn't come back as much. So what I'm telling people to do is, like, you know, do a BRRRR. Like, so what we've done too, right? Like, we don't do BRRRRs that just are quick and flipped out right away. We get really good financing. We make sure the property cash flows. We do a renovation maybe after a year or two of owning the property, generally is what we've done. And then we hold it for another 2 or 3 years, and then we refinance it. Once everything's fully stabilized, then we refinance it because it looks better. So like, we got 5 properties in 2025, 2026 that we're going to be refinancing.
Nice.
But it's annoying in one degree because I'm asset rich and cash poor, like, all the time.
You know it's there.
But but it also builds the safety into the fact that it's like, I never feel like I'm over leveraged.
Yep.
So, but that's the thing to say to people who's going, you know, the perfect deals are still out there, but those deals where you could buy it, put 50K into it, refinance out 100K, and then do it again and again with the same $100,000. I'm not saying there aren't markets that exist and you can do that in, but you know, like, they're not. It's much harder to find those deals, and it's not even that it's harder to find the deals. It's harder to find the financing partner that's willing to do that.
The lender.
Because it's so mainstream now. Like, it used to be like, oh, like, the banks are like, well, you did that. That's great. Okay, perfect. Like, you know. Like,
but now they're getting one a day, or like a bunch of applications are paid for this. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And
I fully leverage out this side.
I think the banks have been burned too a little bit, in the sense that, like, you know what I mean? Like, some people aren't doing the same level of renovations. They're literally putting, like, lipstick on a pig and be like, boom, it's worth $100,000 more. And you're like, that is garbage.
Yeah.
Like, that property is going to be back to what it was worth before you did the renovations in like 6 months when a tenant lives there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
you gotta be careful there with looking.
But I think, you know, what basically, to sum that up, is like, there's opportunities, but patience. Like, you just got to have a bit more patience. And real estate's never been like a get rich quick scheme. It felt like it in 2021, 2022. Like, I mean, a lot of people, like, were making hand over fist, but that was not a normal market. And I think, you know, if you're going back to, like, basics, you got to look at solid deals, solid fundamentals, and have some patience. Like, okay, so you made 300 grand on a property over 4 years. Well, that's still amazing. You know what I mean? Like, or even if you made 100 grand over 4 or 5 years, that's still really good for something that you didn't really, you didn't have to work for that money as much, right?
Especially if the tenant's paying off the majority of your expenses. Right?
Well, and that's it too. Now you also have a tenanted property. Now you have, you know, asset stream. You have something you can pass down to your kids, because that's the long-term thing for me, is like, for us, we're looking 25 years out, and we're going, you know, our kids are going to be like, all those will be paid off. We'll have our retirement, like, our retirement's paid for. So we'll have a retirement paid for. And then the next properties going forward is going to be like our kids' legacy, right? Mm-hmm. So that's, and we don't even have kids yet. So, I mean, like, it's everything is just future planning. It's for you down the road, especially in real estate. Like, it's not for you today. A lot of this stuff, and I think a lot of people get that confused, is like, this is going to make me free for right now. And it's like, no, actually, probably for the next 5 years while you're going on your real estate journey, it's going to be a little bit tough. And then at that 5 year mark, you're gonna be like, I'm so glad I did this. This is amazing.
That's why I ask the questions with every single REC insider is, what's your long-term plan? Why are we having this conversation? And what's your short-term plan? And then try to see if it's realistic, and then kind of draw it out there. Cory, you've been great. Like, this hour flew by.
Yeah.
how can people connect with you? Let's say first and foremost, like what is it that you do for investors? That's something that we touched on it. Obviously, I think people can understand that, but let's just kind of go into, how do you help investors build wealth in real estate?
Yeah. So for me, like, I sit down with people and strategize similar to what you guys do, and strategize different plans for them. Right. So similar to like a financial advisor kind of thing, but like building, okay, this is what I did with my portfolio. This is how you can copy those steps. These are other strategies. I'm going to start on my Instagram. I'm going to be doing a series of 7 different things for different investors, and the pros and cons of each thing for different investors, like wholesaling, for example. Like that's great for a certain type of investor. Passive investment, like second mortgages, that's also great for another type of investor. And it's just knowing, because I know so much now about all these different strategies, it's talking to people and figuring out through listening to their goals and their time restraints and all these things, which opportunity is best for them. Because when you first get into real estate investing, you think like, oh, I'm going to buy a property and whatever, it's going to make rent and whatever, or I'm going to do a flip. But then once you start scratching the surface, you realize there's so many different things, and it's oftentimes easy to get lost in the number of options you have.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, well, which one? You go this way, and then you go this way, but you don't do anything. So my plan with people is, okay, what is your goals? What are you looking to achieve through this? And then let's pick let's pick 1 or 2 things that you can do in real estate that are going to achieve those goals. And that's kind of what I build for them. And then also, like, I run the numbers and go through like a pro forma and figure out, once we're ready to go look at properties, I kind of tell them what I think pros and cons of each property.
And I love your business model too, because you can help investors depending on, it doesn't matter what they need in their portfolio, what they need. If it's improving a property they already own, one of your companies can help with that. If it's finding new acquisitions or building performance, you can help with that as well, which is great, which is why you've helped a good number of our REC insiders in the past. What I'll tell everyone is if somebody does want to connect with Cory, send me an email. I would like to hope this right now everyone has my email address who's listening, but send an email to info@reccanada.com and I'll connect you with Cory. Cory can help you build your plan, especially if you're in that greater Golden Horseshoe. Where's kind of your area, your scope of area anyways?
Yeah, so we're doing basically, like, I service the whole Niagara region. I'll go to Hamilton, but that's kind of basically it. And then for like friends and family, like I help with like Burlington and stuff like that. Like if it's friends and whatever, or referrals, right? Like I work mostly off referrals, so we'll do stuff like that in those areas for people in our circle, or people that you guys work with.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we're expanding into now is, because I'm also looking for deals in different markets, we're starting to send out deals in other markets that make sense too.
Nice. You're running it, right? You have it.
Yeah, because we're looking for them anyways, and we're running numbers on them. So it's like, okay, well, we might as well send this out to our investor community that we have.
Yeah.
So,
and I love what you're doing. It's so good to see. And we spoke. Like I met you 2016, 2017.
Yeah, I think it's 2016.
The growth has been amazing, Cory. So I appreciate your time, everyone. Oh, what's your Instagram handle?
Yeah, it's at Cory Matthews Realtor.
Cory Matthews Realtor. Nick, if you don't mind just putting that in the chat. Here, let me see if I can type it here. Is that right?
Oh, I was in the chat here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, if you don't mind just putting that in the chat for everyone to follow. I'm sure Cory's family would love if you give him a follow, but there's a ton of content and some great ones coming from what I can hear. I can't wait to see that six different videos you're going to be doing. And Cory, I appreciate your time. I'm sure everyone who is listening now, as well as going to be watching the recording, will get some value from our discussion. Again, everyone, if you would like to connect with Cory, even just to see some of the opportunities that he's running for himself, send us an email, info@reccanada.com. I'll connect you with Cory sometime next week. And other than that, Cory, enjoy your weekend. I appreciate you joining us on Sunday. REC Nation, thank you for joining us as well, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks for having me. Have a good day.